responsible participation in the electoral process. We are particularly fortunate to have with us our keynote speaker or keynote presenter, Professor Mohammed Kuna, who is a distinguished scholar, an experienced election administrator, and former special advisor and former technical advisor to the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. He'll be guiding us through the legal and operational aspects of election day procedures, results, transmission, and collation under the Electoral Act. We'll also hear from our partner, the Kuka Center, on election security risks and citizen responsibilities in promoting peaceful elections, which is an issue that remains critical to the credibility and success of any democratic process. So we have with us Fatai Yusuf, who is the research manager at the Kuka Center. I encourage all participants to take advantage of this interactive discussion session, ask questions and share observations. And then finally, last but not the least, I'd like to recognize and acknowledge the European Union for its support to this webinar and continued support to democratic governance initiatives in Nigeria. I also acknowledge all the members of the Judiciary and Legislature cluster under the EU SDGN program, which is comprised of DAI, Yaga Africa, Electa, Nigerian Women Trust Fund, International Press Center, IPC, Center for Media and Society, TIMESO, and the Albino Foundation, TAP Africa, for their collaboration in organizing this webinar. So once again, you are most welcome, and I wish us all a productive and enlightening discussion. At this point, I will be calling on Ms. Laolu Olaumi, Program Manager, Democracy, Rule of Law and Gender at the European Union Delegation, to make her goodwill remarks. I had seen her. She came on a while, but I don't know if Laolu is still logged in. If she is, Laolu, please. Okay. I don't see her. I don't know. Okay, I don't see Laolu still logged in. So I think we'll just step down that item and just go straight to the presentation. Hopefully, when she comes back in, she can say a few words. So at this point, I'll be calling on Professor Mohammed Kuna to begin his presentation. Prof, thank you very much, and you're welcome. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Nkiru. Good morning, and good morning, everybody on the call. I'm particularly glad that I'm on this call to share a few things about the processes and procedures for the conduct of elections, particularly that are related to election day. I think that the organizers couldn't have chosen a better moment, because within the next 272 days, we'll have 3 major elections, 2 off-cycle governorship elections, and a general election. And in fact, one of the 2 off-cycle governorship elections is coming in the next 2 days or so, on Saturday, to be more specific. That's Ekiti. And 58 days ahead, we'll have Oshun governorship election, and then way down the line, towards the end of the year, early next year, we'll be having the general election. So this conversation, in my opinion, is extremely important to put the issues on the table and to see how we can navigate some of the issues that are particularly important on election day. I will have a brief conversation, and will be speaking from a brief presentation that will be first defining election day processes, Secondly, it will seek to discuss the legal framework for the management of election day processes under the 2026 Act. Then I will then focus specifically on PU management and processes. Then I will head to discussing collation management and processes. And then I will discuss briefly on levels of collation and declaration. And then I will then round up by generally talking about the legal basis for the processes and procedures for collation. And then one or two things about conditions leading to supplementary elections. And I'll share a collation flow chart and probably samples of EC8A to E forms, so that people can have some sense of what is happening. When we speak about EC8A, what does it mean? When we speak about B, C, and E, what actually? So I think that it might be good to share some of this. So I begin generally by thanking all of you for giving me the opportunity, and particularly Plaque for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you. The procedures and processes for the conduct of elections in general, as you all know, you have been in the field, you have been observing elections for several years. The procedures and processes for the conduct of elections are embedded in a legal regime. And the foundation of this legal regime is the Constitution that created the Commission in the first place in Section 153. And then and then other sections such as Section 160, subsection 1, that gives the Commission the powers, enough powers to manage their affairs. And I think that in general, since 1999, we have had successive electoral acts, which is part of the legal regime. We have had the Electoral Act 2002, 2006, 2010, and 2022. And all of these successfully tried to try to address some of the integrity issues that observers have put across, both the election managers and legislators, to address some of the integrity issues that we have noticed in the conduct of elections. The last act, the 2006 Act, is the latest act in our election legal regime, and it is this act that will form the basis for the conduct of all subsequent elections from now up to the general election. We don't know, there may be amendments, either along the line or after the general election, but this is something that is a natural process. So an EMB's election day procedures such as voting, collation, and so on are critical elements in managing the entire electoral process. These procedures ensure that elections are free, fair, and credible. And these issues of freedom, freeness, fairness, and credibility are central processes in the defense of the integrity of the vote and electoral outcomes. For an EMB, such as the Independent National Electoral Commission, and indeed for the entire electoral process, voting and collation procedures are much more are more than critical elements. They are the basis on which the credibility of the entire election rests. They involve key elements, in the value chain of election management, from securing voting and related processes securing balloting instruments, protecting tallying and aggregation activities at the polling unit level, as well as organizing transparent and credible collation, declaration, transmission, storage, retrieval procedures at successive levels, of the election. So in and through the movement from polling units to collation centers, election management bodies implement measures that ensure the certainty of procedures while simultaneously making electoral outcomes, uncertain. The greater, I mean, this is extremely important. Procedures such as the conversation we're having today need to be very certain. Everybody needs to be aware of what these procedures are, what they can do, what the do's and the don'ts are, in terms of the conduct and rollout of election. Now, we are trying to say that these procedures need to be certain in order to ensure that nobody can say what the outcome is. And the more the procedures are certain, and the more the chances that people will believe the outcomes, that the outcomes have not been tampered with. If the procedures are tampered with or manipulated, then we begin to suspect that outcomes might not be true reflections of what people have done in terms of voting. So in general, what are election day procedures? Election day procedures all activities refer to all activities, procedures, and procedures, including their coordination, management, and security that are designed to ensure that voters freely, without let or hindrance, exercise their mandate in any election. For election and then for election officials also to engage and transmit results from PUs and to collect these results from the PU up to the next and higher levels of collation and to make declaration of winners of an election. So there are quite a number of elements, involved in the election day process. First of all, at the PU, there are a wide range of activities that are implemented in all of which are designed to ensure that the election is free and fair. There's also activities between the PU and the collation center. There are activities at the collation center. There are activities also that are related to the aggregation, tallying, and announcement of results. Now, before we go to the polling unit, however, as all of you, I'm sure, are aware, before the polling unit, there are certain indispensable processes and procedures that must be effected, before we reach the polling unit. These activities include the activation and management of racks, because you need to ensure that all relevant and necessary materials for the rollout of the election in the morning of the election are available at a place that is close to the polling unit. And in our electoral jurisdiction, the Independent National Electoral Commission created racks, 8,809 racks across the country, where each of the racks is supposed to be more or less not more than a 2-hour drive, to a polling unit to enable, election officials arrive at polling units, in good time. And so there's also issues about organizing security and transportation arrangements at the racks that will ensure, early deployment in the morning. And there are also other processes, that make voting operations on election day possible. These are the indispensable back-end, I think back-end operations, that are critical to election day processes. And we shouldn't lose sight, of this fact, because the failure of these back-end operations will ultimately affect, the smooth, functioning of election day processes, and may even put election day processes in jeopardy. Um, then it's also important, to remember that voting takes place, as things are now. Voting takes place has taken place in the last election in 176,840 826 polling units, across, the country. And I think voting and related procedures such as registration, eligibility, security, fixing voting locations, engaging PU officials and agents, methods of voting, preparing a PU register, commencement of polls, mandatory use of the beavers, accreditation and voting, close of voting, and upload to electronic upload to the upload of results to the IREV are all clearly stated in parts 3 and 4 of the Electoral Act 2026, and in sections 5 to 103 of the regulations and guidelines of the Commission 2026, as well as in chapters 2, 3, and 4 of the manual for election officials. We will come to some of these details subsequently and point to relevant sections. So for the PU to perform its assigned functions, racks must be activated. The election officials, this offers election officials an opportunity to check, that is the rack, offers officials an opportunity to check and double check both non-sensitive and sensitive materials that are critical to the election on election day. And this ensures that checklists, operational readiness of the beavers, other last-minute processes and discussions take place, at the rack in order to prepare and to prompt, these young men and women that are staying over at the racks, to be primed, to deploy in the morning. And I'm sure also many of you who have been part of the election observation know that at the racks, refresher trainings and refresher courses are being taken, for this. So what then is the legal framework for the management of election day processes? I've mentioned some of the elements already: the Electoral Act 2026, the Guidelines and Regulations for the Conduct of Elections 2026, as well as the Manual for Election Officials, also 2026, constitute the framework and procedures for the management of election day processes. It will begin with Part 1 of the Electoral Act 2026 on the National Register of Voters and Voters Registration. These are the sections that laid the foundation for participating in an election. It also provided the framework for election day processes, which became clearer in Part 2, spelling out specific procedures, such as from sections 24 to 28 and 37 to 74. And then also Part 3, which is on Part 3 of the Act, which is largely on accreditation and voting, that spans sections 15 to 46 and 47 to 96. All of this provide a comprehensive legal framework for managing election day processes, from setting up PUs to the collation and declaration of results. These sections altogether specify the procedure for PU setup, ballot boxes and voting devices, format of ballot papers, polling agents, notice of the hour of polls, a display of ballot boxes, as well as accreditation and voting. They also constitute, in part, the foundation for a credible and transparent results management system, having been expanded and amplified for training purposes in the regulations and guidelines, as well as the manual for election officials. So at the PU level, what are the key election day processes? I think there are 4 classes of processes at the PU level that we need to keep at the back of our mind. First is the opening of polls and voter accreditation. Sections 44, 45, 46, and 47 have provided the key elements for elections day activities. From the notice of polls, which is section 44, which is supposed to be given 2 weeks before an election, to the hour of poll, section 45, to the opening and displaying of ballot boxes, for voters and member and all persons present in the polling unit to see that ballot boxes are empty and there's nothing in, and then to seal them, with tamper-proof, materials, which is section 46, to accreditation and voting. And here specifically, accreditation is the steps and the procedures are clearly itemized. Accreditation and voting, section 47, and the determination of winners. Sections 47, subsection 1, 2, and 3 clearly provide the order and point to how voting is to be conducted. Opening of polls at 8:30 a.m., voters presenting themselves with their PVCs, to a presiding officer in the polling unit where they are registered, uh, and that the instruction that POs shall use the BFAS or any technological device prescribed by the Commission in accreditation and so on. All these are foundations of subsequent election activities that constitute what an election is. The second key issue is the voting process and the issuance of ballots, which is also a PU activity. Section 46, subsections 1 and 2 clearly provide for the display of the ballot boxes of / voting or accreditation device to ensure that these are not pre-loaded, these are empty before voting begins. And the presiding officer is also instructed by the same sections to seal the ballot box to prevent tampering by unauthorized persons. And then he or she is also instructed to place the ballot box in full view of persons across the election period, so that it is in full public view. The sections also, I'm sure you know, instruct that voting is to be done by secret ballot. So setting up of the voting cubicle, the distance between voting cubicle and responsibilities for each of the 4 polling officials that are there are all itemized and made in the regulations and guidelines, as well as in the manual for elections. The third issue for me at the PU is the counting and completion of Form EC8A, which is the preliminary, the baseline in terms of the results. So Section 60, subsections 1 to 2 speaks about the closing of polls at 2:30, provided that all persons on the queue before 2:30 shall be allowed to vote. The PO also is instructed by the same sections to count the votes and to transfer such votes onto the form prescribed by the Commission for that level, which is EC8A. And then they are mandatorily requested also to electronically transfer the image from EC8A to the IRF portal. The section made a proviso which was not there in the 2022 Act. It made a proviso that in the event that network fails, a fallback mechanism is provided, to the PO in order to ensure that this is done. But it is compulsory to transmit the results, including the total number of accredited voters, to the next level of collation. And finally, at the PU, the tallying, signing, stamping, and transmitting the result to the IRF, pasting from EC60B and movement to the World Collation Center are key activities, that are there. And here, Section 62 focuses on post-election procedures at the PU and the collation of election results, in which the PO is enjoined to, after all stages in Section 60, subsections 1 to 2 are conducted, to bring to the next level of collation under security and accompanied by polling agents all election materials which are to be handed over to the collation officer at the ward collation level or at the subsequent levels of collation. So the legal responsibilities of presiding officers at this point are the signing of the result, the stamping of the result, displaying the copy of the result, and pasting EC60B, and then moving the entire material collected at the level of the PU to the collation center. So what then are the management processes at the collation center? We have discussed, the processes at the PU, and now we are assuming everything has been concluded at PU. The PO has signed, has stamped, has transmitted, has pasted the EC60B, and is now ready to move to the collation center in the company of security as well as polling agents. So what happens at the collation center? At the collation center, there are also 4 key activities, that we should pay attention to. First is the setting up of the collation center itself. And here, collation officers are enjoined, to go to map out collation centers, to go and survey collation centers and familiarize themselves and see, a few days before election begins, to see the layout, and to ensure that everything is okay. So the collation officer and the EO are supposed to ensure the location, the lighting, seating arrangements, equipment, eligibility, and security of the collation center is all under control. So while voting in all electoral systems take place in specific polling units, results from these units need to be aggregated and formally announced at designated locations based on clear procedures for the determination of winners. The aggregation or tallying of votes cast from the primary places of vote, which are the PUs, to other secondary locations for the determination of winners in electoral context is known as collation. So what are the critical materials, therefore, required at the collation center? The collation center, the PO must come to the collation center with EC8As, with EC40G1, with the beavers, and other relevant election materials, at the level of the PU. So collation then will begin with the tabulation and summation of all election results at various layers from the polling units upwards. In our electoral jurisdiction, collation starts from the ward to the local government to the constituency level, and which will have senatorial districts, federal constituencies, state constituencies, and then at the national level. So at the level of the collation center, at the level of the rack, the commission provides a collation support team, which is called the CSRVS, Collation Support and Result Verification System. These are chaps that have computers, that have e-copies of the EC8 series, and that as the results are being called, they enter these results in Excel sheets, and they assist in calculating the results and tallying and aggregating. And so at the collation center, therefore, all EC8As from the polling units constituting that ward would be tallied into EC8Bs, which is the collation result sheet for the ward level. Then the collation officer is enjoined to certify and issue copies of the EC8Bs to agents and to party agents and the police. So I've quickly run this down, but let me just quickly look at the levels of collation. And there are in our jurisdiction 6 levels of collation, depending on the constituencies. First, there's the presidential constituency. Here, collation takes place, at the RA, at the LGA, at the state, and at the national levels. And you have result sheets that involve EC8As, EC8Bs, EC8Cs, EC8Ds, and a single EC8E, which is the declaration form. At the level of the governorship election, collation takes place also at the RA, at the LG, and at the LGAs, and terminates at the level of the state. And they have EC8As, EC8Bs, EC8Cs, EC8D, and EC8E for the governorship election. At the senatorial level, collation begins at the RA and the LGA and ends at the constituency level. And you have here EC8A1, which is for the senatorial election, and EC8B1, EC8C1, EC8D1, and EC8E1 for declaration. Then for federal constituencies, a collation begins also at the RA and ends at the LGA or constituency levels. Here you have EC8A2, EC8B2, EC8C2, EC8D2, and EC8E2, which is for a declaration of a member of the House of Representatives. Then you have state constituencies, and as you know, there are several hundreds of them. Here, collation commences at the level of the RA and is completed either at the RA or at the LGA, depending on the geographical limits of the constituency and or constituency level with more than one member. So you have EC8A1, EC8B1, EC8C1, and EC8E1 for the state constituencies. Then Finally, you have the FCT area council elections, which is the only local council election that the commission, the national body conducts. And for the chairmanship of area councils, collation begins from the ward level and concludes at the area council, while for councillorship, collation starts and ends at the ward level. So they have EC8A slash EC8C, EC8A slash EC8A1, EC8B slash EC8B2, and no, EC8B slash EC8C, EC8B slash EC8, EC8B1, and EC8C, EC8E slash EC8E1. So let me take that again, please. The collation ends at the ward level. Collation for councillorship starts and ends at the ward level. For chairmanship, it begins at the ward and finishes at the area council. The forms that are relevant in this are EC8A slash EC8A1, EC8B slash EC8B1, EC8E plus EC slash EC8E1. So we have looked at some of the legal procedures and processes, but what is the legal basis for collation and its procedures? I think the Electoral Act 2026 and the Commission's regulations, also 2026, and the manuals, provide ample examples of procedures, and of how the collation process, should be rolled out. Sections 24, 25, 27, 41, 42, 46, 47, 50, 51, 56, 60 to 62, 65 to 67, and so on of the Electoral Act, and clauses 12 to 103 of the Commission's regulations provide the broad framework for the management of election day processes, as well as for the collation and declaration of results. In all this, the physical security of sensitive election materials, locations where voting or counting will be taking place, and the security of the resource management, resource transmission, and custody process are key in maintaining a credible and transparent resource management process. So, to begin with, provisions of the early release of funds, which are all background processes before the collation begins. But with specific reference to the collation and declaration of results, Section 70 of the 2026 Electoral Act provided the overarching framework and foundation of a results management system, empowering the Commission to make guidelines for the step-by-step recording of the polls in the electoral forms as they may be prescribed, beginning from the polling unit to the last collation center for the ward or constituency where the result of the election shall be declared. Much earlier in Section 25, subsection 1 to 3, and in Section 27, subsections 1 to and 2 of the Act, the steps, or levels between the PU and the last collation center were identified, just as the powers for the appointment of personnel for the management of the process were similarly done. These sections have been reinforced by other sections across the Act and amplified in the regulations and guidelines, as for example, in clauses 12 to 14 of the guidelines, 17 to 23, 35, 37 to 39, 40, and 50 to 105. All of these give the electoral system a more transparent, accountable, and secure election day processes and procedures. So I think in general, this for me are the key legal provisions in the Electoral Act 2026. That underpin the management of the entire election day processes and procedures, beginning from the setting up of PUs to the last level of collation in the election. So there are a few issues I had wanted to raise. There are issues about conditions leading to supplementary elections, and the collation flowchart. I think that this matters. I will share the PowerPoint presentation with Plaque so that it can make it available, and then more details in the presentation would then become clear. There are also copies I have made of EC8As, EC8Bs, EC8Cs, EC8Ds, and EC8E provided copies so that colleagues can see what these forms look like. These are from the last previous elections. So, and they change virtually during every election, because the commission redesigns, and puts several features that will prevent this thing. But at least you will have a sense of what an EC8A is, and so on and so forth. So in conclusion, this presentation tries to discuss the processes and procedures under the electoral legal framework in 2026 that govern election day processes in Nigeria. From the opening of polls to collation and declaration, it recounted the various provisions and steps required of election officials and other stakeholders necessary for the conduct of a free, fair, and credible election. In analyzing election day processes, it is important to remember that all activities and plans of the Commission towards an election are geared towards ensuring the smooth operation of election day processes. Thus, election day itself is the culmination of a chain of activities, of events and processes strung together long before that election day, and which still happen a few hours or even days after an election. Furthermore, the presentation shows that these principles have been given effect by a results management legal framework provided by the Electoral Act 2026 and in the Commission's regulations and guidelines also. More specifically, the presentation particularly noted sections 24, 25, 27, 41, 42, 46, 47, 50, 51, 56, 60 to 62, 65 to 60 to 71, 141, 146, and 148 of the Act, and clauses 12 to 40 and 50 to 105 of the regulations as key elements and as the bedrock of election day processes and procedures in our jurisdiction. The presentation laid out the levels as well as the operational framework for the collation of results by discussing the results management system and its components, the collation process, the collation support and results verification system, and the margin of lead principle, as well as the collation flowchart. There is no doubt that the deepening of the use of technology in the collation and results management process by the Electoral Act 2026 means greater transparency, accuracy, security, and timeliness in the management and processing of election results. But it also raises new concerns, especially regarding Section 63(2), Section 77, Section 135, Section 137 and Section 138. I think these provisions, particularly Section 63, subsection 2, open up a lacuna of problems that is at the very heart of the integrity of balloting instruments. When you allow election officials to determine the authenticity of election materials, especially ballot papers issued by the Commission, the road towards the dark days of 2007 seemed to be clear. Considering the tremendous progress made in defending the integrity of the vote, this isn't a route we should ever tread again. I thank you for listening. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Prof, for your presentation. Okay, you can see some clapping and hearts emojis. Thank you very much, Prof. And we are really looking forward to receiving a copy of that presentation. Yes. I'm sure our audience, a lot of them have questions. I'm sure there are comments, but please, I'm going to appeal to everyone to just hold on to your comments and your observations. We have a session for that. We'll take the next presentation, which is very brief. But before I call on the next presenter, that is Fatai is Fatai still here from Kuka Center? Did he drop off? Okay, so I think we'll prompt Fatai to come back on. But before then, let me share that we're using the Zoom webinar feature. We're not using the standard Zoom, and that is why we cannot all see each other, because I know some people have sent me like a few messages. And also that's why you can't unmute yourself. So only the panelists and the host can control that function. But during the interactive session, I think that is going to be disabled so that we can have a good interaction. So for now, you can only see the panelists. But before Fatai comes on, please let me quickly call on Laulu. I think Laulu is back on. I don't to make her brief remarks. Laulu, please.
Thank you very much, Mikiru, and good afternoon now to everyone. Thank you also, Prof, for the presentation. I think that my remarks at the beginning has been overtaken by events, since we have sort of deep dived into the main reason why we are here. And I'm very grateful to Prof for the time he has taken to explain the process of electoral administration, in particular, what happens on E-Day and immediately afterwards, so that we are better, our understanding, it helping us through this and helping us shape our understanding of the process would be extremely important in our work, particularly as we are in the field and also observing the process and trying to determine how transparent the process has gone. So thank you very much to Prof, and to everyone who has joined. We are very happy that that you have made the time to join. As you know, the EU SDGN operates let me just say for people who do not know, we operate a cluster system where thematic areas of the sort of the should I say the electoral process are broken down with specific focus on areas where partners can or have comparative strength and can also contribute. But events such as we are having this morning helps us fine-tune or recalibrate how we are engaging the process and how we are engaging with all of the stakeholders outside of our program. And we hope that with this kind of sort of interactions, we all gain by by the knowledge that we are able to glean from the expertise of people like Prof and all the other speakers that would be taking us through specific aspects of the process today. So again, to say a very big thank you to the administration cluster of the program for making this possible, and to say that hopefully after the new Electoral Act has been put to test in Ekiti elections, we can gather again to also really reflect on how we think the process has gone in the field and what very critical lessons we are able to learn from that process. So I hand over back to you, Nkiru, and thank you to everyone again.
Okay. Thank you so much, Laolu, for those comments. Thank you. We're really grateful. We're grateful to the EU for their support to our work and the work of the cluster partners. So our next presenter is trying to log back on. So I think we should just use the time to do the Q&A with Professor Mohammed Kuna while he logs back on. So we have our moderator for the Q&A, Zigwai Tagwai from Elect Her. So I think Zigwai will take the questions. Please, if you have any questions, just raise your hands and then you'll be unmuted. Like I mentioned, we're using the Zoom webinar function. The way it works is different from the standard Zoom, so you can't automatically unmute yourself. You just raise your hands and then we will unmute you or promote you to panelist so you can ask your question. And then there's also a Q&A box. I think I already see a question there. So maybe we'll start from that. So Zigwai, over to you. I think once we finish the Q&A with Prof, then we'll take our partner from Kuka Center. So Zigwai.
Thank you very much, Nkiru, for that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. Thank you for your questions also. We have a question in the Q&A by Yunusa Mohammed Bashir. However, if it's possible to resend that question because I think it's incomplete. Yunusa, you said in the process of the election, there's going to be collection of results to IREV, but I think it's not complete. So maybe you have to send that so that we can have a full understanding of what you want us to respond to. But while you're doing that, we have a raised hand. John Ayobami, please. Ayobami, John.
Okay, thank you very much to the organizer and the Prof for the presentation. I've been following what Prof has analyzed. He has analyzed the Electoral Act of 2026 very well. And my question is very simple and straightforward. And I want to ask, as an experienced electoral process person, where you are served as technical advisor to the INEC chairman. So do you think this electoral act of 2026 is the best? And what are the possible lacuna? Because there's been a lot of agitation and then debates as to compulsory transmission and that is true. It should go. They should transmit electronically or otherwise. So, but you mentioned that there's a proviso that if the network was not there, they can also do the manual transmission. So I wanted to ask, do you think, in your own opinion, sir, Prof, do you think that the Electoral Act of 2026 is the best electoral act? And what are the possible lacuna? What are the things that you emphasize in this forthcoming election that you think that will not be beneficial to the electorate in terms of their votes? And for them to benefit from the dividend of democracy. Thank you very much, sir. I hope I can be heard.
Yes, I heard you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Are we waiting for some questions, or should I just respond to this? The moderator Zigwe, should I go ahead to respond, or you collect more questions?
I don't know. It seems like Zigwai's video is frozen. Prof. Zigwai, are you still there? Prof, you can respond, and then we'll take more questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. I think that I'm not sure that the question to pose is whether the Electoral Act is the best. I think that that may be a bit problematic to answer, but to say, to ask whether, given our context, whether it can address some of the key challenges in the electoral process that we have seen, over the years. But let me say very clearly, no act, whether electoral or otherwise, no act can address completely the various dimensions of human behavior and misbehavior, if you will, that individuals are capable of, if those individuals are not ready themselves to ensure that the right thing is done. I think that one of the key problems we have been facing is every time there's a general election, we want to change, we want to modify, we want to repeal and enact, a new electoral act. I think the problem is less with the laws than with the operators of the laws themselves. It's with us. You can very clearly see that after every general election, or after every election for that matter, including off-cycle elections, new ways of subverting the system are always, are always contemplated particularly by the political class. And I think that we have spoken about this over and over again. We cannot be in a position where we have to have a new electoral act after every general election, or we have amendments, tremendous amendments after every election. It won't happen. What we are trying to do is to try to legislate to the minutest level the misbehavior of a certain number of people who are operating the political system. And I think this is the crux of the matter. We need to address issues in our political culture. We need to address concrete issues about how people behave in terms of building, a community of people, building a society, people building, a country. We need to address that. So focusing on this act, I think the act has provided and has gone a long way in addressing some of the problems that have been noticed, in previous, in the previous elections. If you look at from 2002 to 2006 to 2010 to 2022, all the amendments, all the new acts that have come in those years were acts that were meant to address, certain critical and fundamental issues dealing with elections. But we cannot legislate problems of elections completely. We have to begin to address, the political culture, the way people behave, the way people seek for office, the way people compete, for, I think this for me is the crux of the matter. So while the act has gone some way in addressing some of the challenges that we have noticed, in the past, less like Ms. Laulu said, let us test this act in Ekiti and in Oshun and in the general election, and then see what politicians are coming up with, because it is always, an issue that you create a law and then they are not looking for ways to abide by the law. They are looking for ways to subvert the law, so that you have to go back to the drawing board again and try to do that. But for now, in my opinion, it can handle some of the things. Although, as I did say in my presentation, there are a number of issues that are really very disturbing, for in this act, which, if possible, some intervention needs to be done, as quickly as possible. For example, the section I referred to, section 63(2), where election officials are given the power to ascertain the genuineness of a ballot paper or a balloting instrument, even overriding the instructions of the commission. I think it is a very, very dangerous, provision that needs to be addressed, very, very, very quickly. This provision we shouldn't go with this provision into the general election. So I know that, John, you would like to say, this is the best or this is the worst. I am not in a position to say that. I'm sorry. But what I can just tell you is that a law is as good as the operators want to make it. If we want to abide by this and ensure that even this provision, if people are vigilant, to insist that the right thing is done, I think that the right thing will be done. In what we have seen in the past is that people are not similarly inclined. So they do what they want, and they try to subvert, the law to gain advantage, and so this has been our lot, and this is why we probably have the most legislated electoral process possibly in the world. Virtually every aspect, has come under scrutiny to try to plug loopholes, but you can't plug these loopholes because some people will always have, some ideas, that will try to undermine, the system. So it all goes back to us as a people, and whether we want to do the right thing and whether we want to defend the right thing, and whether we should listen. So I think that's my personal response. I probably will have taken more time to explain this than necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. I hope that response, John, you were able to follow through Prof. Kuna's response to your question, and for others on the call who had the same concerns or similar concerns. We have two other questions, and we will take both of them so that Prof can answer them together. The first one is from Mustafa Said. What could be the role of AI in the upcoming election? And what do you think the Electoral Commission should be wary of? What could be the role of AI in the upcoming election? And what do you think the Electoral Commission should be wary of? So that's the first question. The second, please, you can unmute. Benjamin, you're muted if you're speaking. Awesome. You're muted again.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please go on.
All right, thank you very much, Pravai. And thank you very much, Prof, for that wonderful explanation. My name is Benjamin. And I want to make my questions straight as possible so that I manage time as well. So the question goes this way. Despite the legal provisions for electoral transmission of results and the increasing deployment of technology in elections, find out that disputes still arise between results announced at polling units and those declared as coalition centers. Prof, in your view, what additional legal, will I say, technological or institutional safeguards are necessary to strengthen public trust and ensure that the will of voters is actually preserved throughout the coalition process? And also, considering Nigeria's electoral history, do you think the biggest threat to election integrity today lies in voting itself, result transmission or coalition? What reforms should citizens advocate for to address that weakest link of the electoral system? Thank you very much. I hope my question was clear, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Benjamin.
Awesome. Prof, you have the floor. Those are the two questions we have for now.
I think two questions. One from Mustafa, what could be the role of AI in the upcoming election? I think your guess is as good as mine. I think we have seen how increasingly AI is posing serious issues to processes, to organizations, and to societies across the world. I think that it will surely people will surely make an attempt, to use AI to do a number of things, to infiltrate probably the system of the commission, and attacks, on the processes and procedures of the commission are nothing new. We have had these attacks as early as 2010, 2011. And probably even earlier, and I think that as far as I know, the Commission's IT department is up to the task in terms of attempting to deal with threats, to the system and to hacks in the system. I think they are up to the task. The issue is not to blacklist it completely, and say you don't want anything to do with AI, because AI has come to stay. I mean, we have to embrace it. Let me tell you, several years ago, there were protests in certain universities in Europe when they started building calculators to prevent protests by professors across some universities that says that calculators are going to destroy the thought processes of young men and women who are coming to the universities, and that they didn't want calculators, that calculators should be struck off completely. Now, several years down the line, several decades down the line, calculators have become part and parcel of everyday life. Universities still produce mathematicians. They still produce physicists and scientists and statisticians and calculators are still there. So we have to learn to manage, the effect and impacts of AI. We have to learn to embrace it and use it for purposes that are noble, to help us, to address some of the fraud in the electoral process that we are seeing, to address some of the issues that dealing with result transmission, and to assist, to cut the time, with which, we take to do a number of events and processes. And I think that we need to embrace it in order in order for it to assist us, to do legitimate work, while at the same time being aware that there are, dangers, that it poses, and find ways of addressing and preventing those dangers. So I think as a commission, there's no way, not only an electoral commission, but any other organization can't run away from relying on AI. It has, I think, come to stay, and the earlier we embrace it and understand it, and deploy it to useful purposes, I think the better. So the second issue from Benjamin, if I recall correctly, legal provisions on result transmission, and how trust can be strengthened, because he made a very valid observation of a discrepancy in certain instances between what is collected and between what is announced, or uploaded onto the portals. And I think that this is important. I think there are a number of issues as from what I can see. In certain instances, some of these discrepancies happen because when you upload raw results on the IREF, some of these raw results do not take into consideration certain other forms and processes, such as, for example, the EC40G PU or EC40G1. If you don't have access to EC40G1, where cancellations may have been made, and you simply collect, results, EC8A results from the PUs without taking into consideration the EC40G one, where cancellations may have been made at the level of the PU, then the results cannot be correct. So one clear intervention that can be done, is to ensure that for each PU result that is uploaded, some measure of the EC40G one, where cancellations are made, is also similarly provided. So people can then compare, okay, yeah, so votes were cancelled at this polling unit, and therefore is less than the amount of, it's less than the number of votes that you have seen on the tally. That, I think, will reduce, the tension, generally. But to be very definitive, I think a direct transmission from votes from voting to collation, that will be the quickest way to deal with this with this lack of transparency and issues that are being raised about public public trust in the transmission of results. To cast your vote on a system and see the vote reflected directly at the collation center. We may come to that, one of these days, but I think that may be the neatest, way to address, these discrepancies and these problems.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope that for those who, Benjamin and Mustafa, your questions have been addressed. We have just one more question before we go to the second speaker. This question is from Usman Abubakar. In a case where the results in EC8A transmitted to IREV differs from the one in physical EC8A form, which one prevails? So that's the question, Prof.
Hey, that one is a serious matter for me because I'm not sure I'll be able to answer that question. But the results that are coming from PUs, the EC8As that are being scanned and uploaded to the IREF should be the same EC8A to be presented at the collation center for the purposes of collation. So what you are saying is that that one on the IREF is different from the one presented by the PO at the level of collation. If that is the case, then I think the collation officer, and that's why I think the provision now in the new act is for collation officers to verify both the number of accredited voters on the beavers, as well as as well as compare also the physical copy of the EC8A and the electronic copy of the EC8A, whether they agree or not. If they don't agree, there are already in the guidelines regulations that very clearly indicate that the collation officer has to take a number of steps, to deal with this process.
Thank you so much, Prof, for your time and audience for the questions. We will just take a pause right now. Our second speaker is online, Mr. Fatai, and I'll just give the floor to Nkiru to introduce him again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Zigwai, for that. I think there was one more question, but it's on security. So I'm guessing that Fatai will respond to that after he speaks. So without you wasting much time, I'm just going to invite Fatai to please take the stage. Fatai is the research manager at the Kuka Center, and he'll be speaking on safe and peaceful participation, understanding election security risks, and citizen responsibility on election day. This is going to be a quick presentation, and then we'll take questions from him when he's on. You're welcome, Fatai.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me on this very important conversation. And okay.
You still not seeing this things?
Okay, so I'll be making a quick presentation on what is safe and peaceful participation, how we can understand the election security risk and citizens' participation on election day. Please, next slide, please. Thank you. So, as we all know, election security in Nigeria right now is no more a rumor. It has become a pattern in this country. And what we've seen so far is that it wears many faces. From the fist, which are all form of physical violence that we've seen in the country, physical violence, kidnapping, banditry, voter intimidation, name it. So this physical violence is what we describe as the feast pattern. The second pattern we've seen is the ghost, which is the cyber security, the cyber threat to INEC infrastructure, vote buying, which has become a norm now in Nigerian elections, because vote buying nowadays it has come to stay, because there have not been major prosecution of political parties who are engaging in vote buying as well, and the sellers who are selling it as well. And the third one is the misinformation part, which is the whisper, misinformation and suppression. In Nigeria nowadays, I would say there's been deliberate attempts, to spread false and fake information. All these are they have the capacity to, to limit how people can come out to vote. And in Nigeria now, this election security, like it's all about the safety. What is the integrity of the process and the credibility and the public confidence that people will have to come out and vote. Next slide, please. All right. So now it's important for us to understand what are the election day threats that we've been seeing in Nigeria, and like I said, the major one that is very paramount nowadays, it's vote buying and inducement, and this comes in many forms. It could be cash, it could be gifts, it could be anything, even promises of appointment. If you support me, I promise to put you in place, put you in power. So vote buying is something that is really rampant nowadays in our election. And the second one is ballot box snatching. Like you all know, this is is still ongoing in Nigeria. Even as we progress to 2027 general election, we still see cases of ballot box snatching here and there. And then voter intimidation, this threat as well. It's something that is really, really important to address, because if you intimidate the voters, you are not giving them the confidence to come out and exercise their right. And the fourth one, which we will see, is the result sheet falsification. INEC has guidelines on this, and the manipulation of from EC8, like Prof said, it's the major offense in Nigeria. And the fifth one is disinformation and fake news. Fake news, like I said, it's a deliberate attempt to ensure to disenfranchise voters by ensuring that you suppress their turnout. It poses a dangerous threat on election day. And the last one is thuggery and political violence, which is deployment of armed groups just to disrupt the process. And all these are just few of the election day threats that we are seeing nowadays in Nigeria. Next slide, please. Yeah, before I go further, I would like us to take a moment to examine this historical data about election incidents in Nigeria. This risk map we are looking at is aggregate of the past 4 election cycles in Nigeria, general election cycles in Nigeria, and we can all see that it is not static. It's moving from northeast, northwest down to the south. So it's static. So looking back at the historical data, what is showing us is that our election is not perfect yet, but it's going, but we should be mindful of the election day violence that is happening in the country. Please, next slide. Okay, so from June last year to June this year, from to date rather, the Election Security Information Hub and the Democracy Center has been actively collecting data on what are the pre-election security threats that we are seeing in the country at the moment. And from what you are seeing on your screen, this is just a map of the current pre-election threats in Nigeria. As you can see, it's like I always like to put it, it's not looking good. We are going into election period that even for people to come out and vote, there will be fear in their mind, like, with all this insecurity going on in the country, what's going to happen? Am I free to travel to go and vote, or even vote at my backyard? And the top 5 threats we are seeing in pre-election period are: number 1, mandatory, kidnapping, government attack, terrorism, of course, and cultism. So these are all election-related violence we've gathered so far. These are violence that, yes, they don't have anything to do with election, but they have they are not directly affecting election, but they are indirectly affecting election, because once the process itself, once there's fear in the people that will come out and vote, it's not going to speak well for the election management in Nigeria. Next slide, please. Yeah, now looking at the electoral offenses that we've got, the data we've gathered so far in Nigeria from June last year to date, the number one incident, electoral offense that we've gathered is the thuggery, followed by fake news, which, like I said, it has come to stay in Nigeria. And I think there's deliberate attempt from more political parties, to spread misinformation, create this fear in people. And the third one is the intra-party conflict. And if you look at the breakdown so far, these are all electoral offenses that are sanctioned in the Electoral Act of Nigeria. And because in Nigeria, we don't actually take accountable, of who are the primary perpetrators of this violence. It's really it is important that voters should recognize what are the pre-election traits, early warning signs that they should pay attention to. Number one is the unusual movement of strangers in your neighborhood. If you notice there are people that are not resident in your neighborhood, but they are moving, the movement is it's suspicious. It's an early warning sign for you to take note. The second one is stockpiling of weapons, cutlasses, and dangerous items. Before election, there will be plans from people who want to disrupt the election, and security agencies have the mandates to ensure that they checkmate people who are stockpiling all these weapons and bringing them accountable. The other one is inflammatory rhetorics. Yeah, in Nigeria, like I said, everybody is now politically correct in Nigeria. Everyone has something to say, whether it is true, whether it is false, whether it can cause harm. People tend to just put anything on social media, even without verification. And then all these have tendencies to disrupt the election, even cause ethnic and religious conflict in the country. The other one is distribution of cash or goods to voters. Pre-election, we've been seeing cases whereby politicians we actively, distributing all these goods and cash, all in name of canvassing for votes. And we all know that these are all pre-vote buying strategy that they use. The next one is intimidation. Yeah. Before election, you will see a lot of people coming to intimidate voters, even stopping people from coming out to campaign. We've seen this even in party, and the last one is withdrawal of key security personnel. If there is a withdrawal of security personnel from strategic point where we know that there's likely going to be conflict, these are early warning signs for us to take note. And let me just quickly run through what's the early warning sign on election day. Number one, if you see presence of armed individuals near your polling units, in fact, it's something that you should pay attention to. And the second one is on attempt to by unauthorized persons to handle or move ballot box. Only the electoral officers are allowed by law to touch the ballot box. Only the INEC officials. So all other persons trying to do this are against the law. And the third one is voters being turned away. Yes, like I said, If we see voters being turned away, even without due cause, it's an early warning sign that there's something going to be, a violence going to erupt in this place. The next one is disruption or deliberate obstruction of accreditation process. Yeah, we've seen this a lot in Nigeria, and these are some of the early warning signs in the country. Next slide, please. All right, so as a citizen, what's our own responsibility? What should we be mindful of? What's going to be what we are going to do as citizens? Number one, we have to ensure that we collect our PVC. Without PVC, we cannot vote, and PVC is like is our instrument of power on election day. So the second one, we have to make sure that we arrive early. Early arrival at polling units, ensure that there will be queue management, people management, people when this if there is disruption in the process, it will lead to violence, and with that we don't want that. And the third one is observe and document. If you see something on election day, just quietly document it. It's very important that we as citizens are also do what we are accountable. The fourth one is we have to try and, as much as possible, to avoid and expose vote buying. We've seen this even in the last FCT election. Vote buying become something that people publicly engaging, and this doesn't speak well for the country. The next one is the de-escalate tension. If you see something, if you witness something, if you have the capacity, just alert the security agencies close by that this is what is happening. Whether have contributed your quota in this escalating the tension. And the next one is accept results credibly decided. So if the result is okay, INEC has already done their part, so it is now left for us to accept the results. If we don't want to accept the results, then the political parties and the candidate can now approach the court of law. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just a quick guide on what are the do's and don'ts on election day as far as security is concerned. Number one, please, it is important that we move to safety. Once there's crisis in your polling units, just quietly move to safety, because you don't want to be part of the statistics in Nigeria. The second one is avoid confrontation. Even as much as you want to exercise your rights, if you see that these people are coming to attack, it's very important that you do everything in your power to avoid the confrontation. And inform security officials. Yes, security officials will be there, and they will want to ensure that everything goes according to plan. But if they are not close by you, so we as citizens have this duty to quickly inform them. And the next one is report through official channels. So if there's any form of conflict that you don't see, even from the INEC parts or the political parties, there's appropriate channels to report to. So for the don't, please try as much as possible not to engage in fighting. Fighting is escalate, and before you do it, it will lead to major issue. And as citizens, we should not even chase offenders. That is the work of the security personnel to deal with. And spreading of rumors, as citizens, we should ensure that we don't engage in this. Spreading unverified information have the tendency to disrupt the process. If you see something that is not verified or not from INEC or any official channel, we as citizens have this responsibility not to spread it. So spreading rumor leads to further chaos in the process. The last one is taking unnecessary risk. Nowadays people want to, like I said, people want to be politically correct, and these are all something that will destroy, that will put their life in danger. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what is shared responsibility for every stakeholders? Number one, for INEC, INEC has this responsibility to ensure that poll open on time, they display the result sheet, and conduct everything, all their processes without any form of bias or partiality. And security agencies, like we always encourage them to ensure that they remain they remain professional and they do everything without any form of bias. For political parties and agents, yes, these are the key stakeholders when it comes to election, and when it comes to the conduct of their supporters at times. They should be mindful of how their supporters, even their party agents, will behave on election day. And I think they should have a form of capacity building, even for all these so-called agents that will come to election to polling units with the sole purpose of coming to disrupt the process if the result is not in their favor. I think for traditional rulers and religious leaders, it's important that they are advocates of peace in their community. There should be continuous advocacy on peace and to ensure that everybody participates and do what they are supposed to do. They should be mindful of their community, their subject in their community. And for media practitioners, yes, it's important that when doing reporting, they only report verified fact, and they should avoid inflammatory headlines. We know in Nigeria, not all of us love reading the full news. Some of us will just pick up the headlines and run away with it. This is very common in Nigeria. So people will just for the sensation of it, you just pick up the headline and run away with it, not even mindful of what's in the body of the news. So media practitioners have this sole responsibility to ensure that what they are putting out there as headlines is not inflammatory. It's not something that will cause further chaos. So for civil society organizations, yeah, our proactive observation of the electoral process is important. So we need to, keep training field observers to ensure that we get accurate and well-dated facts from the field that can help our own observation of the process, and to ensure that in our situation rooms we record all this everything that happened in election on election day. This will ensure that the lessons learned can be used to enhance further election. And we should ensure that we share real-time and verified information. Next slide, please. Yeah, so lastly, as citizens, our rights as citizens of this country, we should ensure that we have right to vote freely. Yes, this is paramount in Nigeria. It is our right to vote freely, and it's also our right to ensure that we vote secretly without any form of intimidation. And what you should know, I voted for, so it should be something kept very secret. And it is also our right to be treated respectively. And so on election day, it is your right to ensure that you are treated respectively, irrespective of how the voter is, maybe it's person with disability. Everybody has the right to be treated respectfully. And as citizen, please, your safety is paramount, when it comes to election in Nigeria. Please, your safety is very, very paramount. So we should try as much as possible to remain safe. Even if there's crisis in your polling unit, just find a safe space to stay. And it's also your right to observe the process. Yes, you voted, you've seen the voting has ended. It is also your right to observe the process, not interfere in the process. And it's also your right to ask questions. When on election, it's also right to ask questions. And actually, it is also your right to refuse intimidation, any form of intimidation that will not make you come out and vote. Please, it's your right to refuse any form of intimidation. Next slide, please. So lastly, I want to end with a note. A peaceful election is not accidental. It is a product of every informed citizen's choice. So it is important that we know our right, watch out for early signs, and then choose peace as always. Thank you very much. Over.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatai, for your presentation. I think it's time for questions. We'll take questions. Zigwai, are you still here? Okay.
Yes, I am here. Thank you so much, Fatai, for that very detailed presentation again. And we already have a question question for you in the question and answer chat. And it says, what security measures are in place to protect the masses during the course of elections, given recent cases of insecurity? I think awareness of such strategies and plans in place will encourage the masses to vote in their numbers. Please, what do you have to say? While we wait for others to indicate by raising their hands or still dropping questions in the Q&A session, please. Fatai, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Like I said, pre-election, the security agencies will be actively watching out for the bad guys, trying to ensure that they arrest as many they can arrest. Because if part of the early warning signs is to ensure that you track down where are those hotspots in Nigeria that violence is likely going to happen. So as security agencies, they should be very, very, very at alert, in gathering intelligence, especially when it comes to election. If you look at the risk map I shared, you will see that the trend of insecurity has left northeast. That's left northwest. It's now north central coming down to southwest. So security agencies, proactive measures pre-election, it's very important. Gathering intelligence and arresting the bad guys as early as possible will give even the voters confidence to come out and vote. And during election, on election day, the Electoral Act is very specific on how arms should be carried by members of ISIS. Within the polling area, they are not expected to bear arms, but a few meters after the polling unit, you will see armed personnel there. So I want to employ them that they should ensure that all this polling unit, there's a form of security presence, security officers that can carry arms. This will give voters confidence to come out and exercise their right. If that is not the case, so that means they are giving room for the bad guys to come, and disrupt the process. And if security presence if there's armed security presence, I'm very sure the talks that will come out and do all sort of things, they will think twice before coming. And post-election, when the voting has officially ended, we want to employ the security agencies to ensure that flashpoint areas, this form of security presence in all the flashpoint areas, because if that's not the case, protests can erupt that can spread everywhere. But if there's presence of security post-election, it will help in curtailing some of these things from coming out. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Do we still have more questions? We still have. So if you have questions across both in your hand or dropping your question in the Q&A. Any questions? Are we all clear? No concerns? We need more questions, Okay. I think that Professor Kuna and Fatai have done justice to the conversation today. We're hoping that everybody on the call has had good insight into the process and procedures and the detailed documents and frameworks that are needed and what your roles and also your rights are. And we're hoping that you apply all of these learnings in the elections across board. Thank you so much as I yield the floor to Nkiru.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Zigwai. I actually had a question for Prof. I don't know if Prof is still here.
Yes, I am.
Prof, okay. If you will, please, I have just one question before we wrap, before we hand over to YAG Africa to do the wrap up. So my question is this, section 65, dealing with power of the commission to review declarations. It has generated considerable discussion because it appears to give INEC broad powers to review election declarations and returns. In the new act, the provision saying that a declaration or return is final has been removed, has been deleted in section 65. So my question is this, does this provision strengthen electoral integrity by enabling or providing opportunity for the correction of errors during election? Or do you think it will create new areas of uncertainty and potential controversy in elections? Thank you, Prof.
It is another dangerous provision. To be very honest, another dangerous provision in line with section 63 2 that I mean, 63.1 or 63.2 I mentioned earlier. I think that the whole essence of the issue of the review or results is not is not meant for anyone who feels aggrieved to have results reviewed. That channel is already, the courts are there. This mechanism in the 2022 Act arose from experiences where our own staff were forced to make declarations under duress. This was the source of the issue. And it wasn't meant for politicians to apply to say they want their results reviewed. No, you can't turn the commission into a court. What that provision is in the 2022 Act, in our opinion, was to protect staff who are forced to make declarations. And we have a number of cases where those staff were forced to make declarations under duress. And the commission was empowered now to review those circumstances and to either uphold or cancel the result. That was the mechanism. Now that mechanism is removed. And I think that it is, in my opinion, is a very bad move. Thank you. And in addition, there are also other issues. I just posted on the private chat a number of sections in this 2026 Act that are still referring to smart card reader and card reader, and I think that this is something that needs to be addressed.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Totally correct. I think those are mistakes from cleanup or drafting. Those provisions were actually supposed to be removed since INEC doesn't use smart card readers anymore. So yes, I think that's an important observation. Okay, so thank you everyone we still have good participation. We have about 65 people in the room, but we'll be wrapping up quickly. Thanks for your patience and for waiting till the end of this webinar. So I think at this point, we'll just go to our last item, which is the key takeaways and recommendations, and then followed by closing remarks. And this will be handled by Yaga Africa. We have Dr. Samuel Oguche in the room. So Dr. Oguche, please, can you just unmute? Dr. Oguche?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure being with you again. I think it has been a very wonderful conversation so far. Prof, thank you very much, Prof, and Adia Fatai for the wonderful presentation. what I've been asked to do is to, bring out the key takeaways and recommendations from here. And having listened to the two presentations, many things stand out for us, and they're very key to the understanding our election day procedures, including transmission and collation of results under the new Electoral Act 2026, including, again, the safe and peaceful participation in our elections, particularly election day and election security. First, one thing is sure that election integrity begins at the polling unit without prejudice to pre-election activities that are key, but in terms of managing our elections from the polling unit to the collation center, it is obvious that election security begins at the polling unit. And for this, the polling unit remains the foundation of the electoral process. This is because election results recorded there constitute the primary expression of the will of the voters. And it will also form the basis for all subsequent collation activities. Furthermore, election day procedures must be strictly followed. What does it tell us? Compliance with the Electoral Act, regulations and guidelines, including manuals of the Commission, will become essential to ensuring transparency, credibility, and public confidence in our electoral outcomes. 3, result transmission and collation serve complementary functions. And one thing that stands out from there is that while electronic transmission enhances transparency and public access to election results, the collation process provides the legal and administrative framework for aggregating, verifying, and validating results, at various levels. 4, understanding the levels of collation is critical. And as we listen to the presentation made, we discover that there are various layers of collation. So election results pass through multiple collation stages, from polling unit to ward to local government area, state, national levels, depending on the election being conducted. So each level has clearly defined responsibilities, procedures, and accountability mechanisms. 5, effective management of collation centers is indispensable. So successful collation requires proper coordination of personnel, adherence to timelines, orderly documentation, crowd management, communication protocols, and strict adherence of established procedures to prevent errors and disputes. Another one is electoral forms. That is the forms from EC8 A, B, and C, and others that were discussed, are indispensable instruments of electoral accountability. And on this, it is obvious that forms used for voting, result recording, transmission, and collation constitute the official documentary evidence of the electoral process. And the implication is that their accurate completion, preservation, and verification are essential to the credibility of election outcomes. Next, physical security of election materials and processes remain paramount. And this came out very strongly in the presentation, that the integrity of ballot papers, result sheets, beavers, or other technological devices used, and other sensitive materials must be protected throughout the electoral cycle, and this is to prevent tampering, loss, destruction, and even unauthorized access. Next is technology strengthens both, to strengthen the electoral process. So technology is indispensable, although it does not replace legal procedures. Again, transparency and accountability reduce electoral disputes. And that's why it was emphasized that the processes leading to the collation, even up to declaration of results, must be seen to be transparent. And so open collation procedures, proper documentation, and stakeholder observation, help build confidence in election outcomes and strengthen democratic legitimacy. Another issue is artificial intelligence. It poses both opportunities and emerging threats, to electoral integrity. And as we listen to in the presentation, why artificial intelligence can enhance, our electoral or election management, it also has a lot of implications, negative consequences when misused. Consequently, we must watch out, avoid spreading fake news through the use of AI in order not to jeopardize the electoral process. Again, every election official is a custodian of the voter's mandate. And so from the polling unit officials to collation and returning officers, all electoral personnel have a responsibility to ensure that election results accurately reflect the choices made by voters. Next is that credible elections require coordination among all stakeholders. No doubt, as was brought out in the last presentation, all stakeholders have responsibilities, and these citizens have their responsibilities to vote and be orderly in their conduct. INEC has its own responsibility to manage the electoral process in a credible and transparent manner. Media practitioners have their responsibility to avoid, spreading rumors, but verify facts accurately before spreading them, even secrets in the electoral process. And again, in terms of the legal framework, the Constitution, the Electoral Act, INEC guidelines and regulations, including guidelines, are the major instruments that regulate our elections. And so we have been also, made to understand, and this is a key takeaway, that there are some key constitutional provisions that are indispensable when we talk about elections in Nigeria. Sections like Section 24, 25, 27, 42, 46, 47, 50, 51, up to 48 have been identified, including some clauses 12 to 40, 50 to 105 of the regulations. Again, there are some red flags in the Electoral Act that we must watch out for and ensure that they don't mar our elections. Sections like 63 sub 2, Section 77, 137, 138, they show problems that we have to deal with in terms of our electoral integrity. Again, credible elections require coordination among stakeholders, which I've already mentioned. Number 14 is that election responsibility is a shared responsibility. Sorry, election security is a shared responsibility. So no one agency, no one body, no one institution can ensure election security if we do not all look at it as a common issue. Consequently, while security agencies have the primary responsibility of maintaining law and order, citizens, political parties, candidates, election officials, observers, and even media practitioners all have important roles to play. And this has already been mentioned. And I will say, again, that one of the key takeaways is that misinformation, disinformation, and AI-generated content pose growing threats to election security. Finally, responsible citizenship is fundamental to peaceful and credible elections. Responsible citizenship is fundamental to peaceful and credible elections. So citizens should collect their PVCs well ahead of election day. They should also arrive at polling units early enough to participate in the process. Citizens must reject and expose vote buying and other election or electoral malpractices. Again, we must avoid spreading rumors, misinformation, and unverified information that could inflame tensions. Citizens must also refrain from, taking unnecessary risks that may endanger their safety. And then finally, on the takeaway, Peaceful participation strengthens democracy. On the whole, from the two presentations, it is clear to us that as citizens, as stakeholders, we must ensure that our electoral process can only be credible if we could provide a peaceful atmosphere for the election officials, citizens, political parties, candidates, security personnel to operate. And we must also be able to take electoral outcomes as declared by the umpire in good faith, if credibly, compiled. Finally, it is our collective responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Dr. They are supposed to
another
give
component, yes, vote of thanks. Let me, on this note, thank our erudite presenters, Professor Kuna and our dear Fatai, for the wonderful presentation made. In fact, this issue could not have come at a better time than this. We have started test running the Electoral Act, the kitty is here, and going forward, these presentations, constitute like eye-openers. And to partners in this cluster, the cooperation and synergy is wonderful. I want to thank all participants. The EU also can see Laolu is still here. We want to thank you for taking out time and giving us support to thrive in this cluster and generally the USGGN. Election is something that concerns all of us. It's all about the survival of Nigeria. And as we work in this direction, it is our hope that our efforts will yield positive results. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Sam. That's the end of the webinar. I don't have anything to say except please just fill the attendance. It's just housekeeping, the attendance form, our evaluation, and then data reimbursement form. So we're just going to leave the platform open for like the next 10 minutes. It's 1:20. At 1:30, we'll shut down. So please use the remaining 10 minutes to fill the relevant forms. Thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.